Hey everybody, this is some guy named Rob with On Your Marks Wrestling, and welcome to another Rob Recaps Raw. This one for March 26th, 2018. I'll start with the TLDR. I felt that this show was certainly a big step up from last week, which was a complete dumpster fire. They really had nowhere to go but up in this case, and they managed to actually get a fair amount of it right. But the show on the whole really wasn't all that good. It still had a lot of mediocrity. Um, Things that are going to be it's hard to kind of separate the good from the bad because if I took out all the stuff that was just really good and just the stuff that I felt bad or felt was bad, this wouldn't be very long. I could probably recap this entire 3 hour Raw show in about 2.5 minutes because there really wasn't a lot worth talking about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, and I'm going to sort of arbitrarily throw it into did I think it was a little bit below mediocre or a little bit above mediocre? So these are not ringing endorsements or condemnations by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, overall, not a great show. But let's take a look at what was good about Raw last night. I thought Raw had a really great, strong opening. Paul Heyman's promo about, if right about now you're thinking in the script, this is what would happen normally. I thought that was brilliant. That to me was probably one of the best promos I've heard him cut in quite a while. And Paul is never weak on the microphone. Paul is always money on the microphone. So having him come out with something like that was great. I thought that promo was fantastic. I thought Roman Reigns showing up was hokey. It was predictable, but in fairness, you're building up to WrestleMania. It's only a couple weeks away. You get one more Monday Night Raw before the big show. So yeah, it was expected, but it was balanced. I thought that the beatdown, starting with Roman, coming out and doing everything that he could before finally getting caught by Lesnar, and then Lesnar continuing the beating from last week, I thought it looked really, really good. And a lot more balanced, and it didn't drag like it did last week. That was the big takeaway, is it didn't feel like the segment went on way too long. The next thing that I liked, because it injected some much needed energy into what was an otherwise pretty dead Cleveland, Ohio crowd, the Cruiserweight tag match was nice. I like seeing those guys on Raw. I like having them featured on the Red Show because you have so much air to fill. Instead of filling it with highlight packages and recaps of everything that's happened, like an hour previously, you could put on another match. They have room to put on 1 to 2 cruiserweight matches a week to supplement what is on the network for 205 Live. And hey, maybe you'll get enough people who see the cruiserweights as entertaining to want to subscribe to the WWE Network to watch 205 Live every week. It's an idea. Put them on the free TV, on the network program, so that people try to buy your private sort of network, your kind of paid subscription channel. I don't know why they don't do this more often. They seem to be in love with their video packages, and all they have to do is trim the fat a little bit from that and a couple of the matches every night. You've got yourself an instant cruiserweight spot every single week. Also, big fan of the Miz TV segment of this week. From beginning to end, really, I loved the tease of the breakup of the Miztourage, the references to going back to believing in yourself, and the Miz claiming that he was a better champion, and a better Intercontinental Champion than Mr. Perfect that got Curtis Axel's attention. I thought that was fantastic. Only to have it come around and turn into a beatdown on Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. Now, that part was a little bit predictable because, let's face it, we're 2 weeks away from WrestleMania. You're not going to have major sort of game-changing storyline breaks or breaking developments in the storyline this close to WrestleMania. But I thought it was a good job to kind of throw a curveball to everybody. And overall, it was just a really entertaining segment. So, that was a bonus. Like the Elias versus Rhino match, Elias looking strong. Elias is another one of those candidates, like I mentioned in my previous SmackDown recap about Rusev. where you could take him and put him with a television title to have him go down or go between SmackDown and Raw and have him defend on SmackDown, defend on Raw, and then let's say he loses the title on a SmackDown show. Well, he ends up being on the SmackDown roster for a while unless he wins back the TV title or there's a superstar shakeup. I think Elias is another strong candidate for that. He could easily go back and forth between the two brands, especially with his gimmick of the Drifter. And I think that he could have really great matches in the mid-card with both sets of rosters. And I really hope that after WrestleMania, they really give serious consideration to a TV title and doing something like that, because the draft and the superstar shakeup and all that other stuff, you know what? No one cares. I don't care. If I'm going to see a superstar shakeup, I'd rather it be through an organic process, through, making it look like it's actually booked rather than it's, oh crap, our ratings are in the toilet. What other kind of dream matches can we put together because our roster's gotten stale because the same guys have faced the same guys for so long? The next hit on my list, so to speak, the first 90% of the John Cena-Kane match. Normally that would not be on my good list, but it was better than expected. It was more entertaining than I had given it potential credit for. I didn't think it was going to be a good match. It wasn't a great match by any stretch of the imagination, don't get me wrong, but it was entertaining enough to hold the time that it did on Raw. I don't feel that the match went on for too terribly long. That first 90%, right up until after the suplex into the barricade spot and then them getting back into the ring, I thought was pretty good. Certainly good enough for what it needed to do. And I was pleasantly surprised. Last thing that I was pleasantly surprised by, oh my god, they finally had Bayley and Sasha Banks get into a fight with each other. I thought it was great having Bayley cut down Sasha Banks, who was trying to brag that she's a 4-time Raw Women's Champ, and asking her, well, how long did you actually hold those titles for? Because I don't think Sasha Banks has really held a Raw Women's title or any women's title longer than it takes me to basically brew a cup of coffee, which I thought was a great slam. The audience seemed to really get off on that insult. That was really, really good. I also like the intensity of the actual fight itself, but that does lead into a problem, which I guess will start off the bad list, is why is Sasha Banks pulling off the heel moves? She was the one that attacked Bayley. She was the one who grabbed Bayley by the head and basically slammed her head into the lockers. She was the one who basically went back after Bayley when the referees separated them backstage. Those are typically your heel moves, and yes, you can make Sasha Banks work as a heel very easily. That's not hard. That is the easy way of booking it. The more compelling way of booking it is to have Bayley as the heel, as the instigator, as the one who kind of drops the gloves and just goes to town and gets brutal and gets nasty. That should have been Bayley grabbing Sasha Banks by the hair and slamming her head into the lockers. That would have made more compelling booking. I have a feeling that they're going to get gun shy on pulling the trigger on turning Bayley heel because they're worried about, I don't know if they're worried about merchandise sales or if they're worried about, audience demographics. But if they do that, they're doing it for every reason other than the actual wrestling storyline, which would be much more interesting with Bayley as a heel. Still in the women's division, Asuka versus a jobber. Why? Okay, actually, let me answer that question. I know why. They're trying to give Asuka some heat back, the one kick strike to finish the match to kind of show off to Charlotte, like, oh my god, one shot knocks everybody out, but it's a jobber. And at this point, we don't, if it's somebody that was coming up from NXT, maybe. But if it's someone who you've never seen before, and they go out of their way to do a promo with, Charlie Caruso did a promo with this person. I don't remember her name, and I don't think she does either after that kick to the head. But that promo before the match lasted longer than the match itself. And then the post-match dancing celebration before cutting back to the announce team, that lasted longer than the actual match, and it was just pointless. The crowd really didn't care, and neither did I. The Good Brothers versus the Miztourage in the later part of the show. The match looked like it was in slow motion. When Luke Gallows was waiting for the hot tag from Carl Anderson, he looked bored. He was standing on the apron, reaching out with a blank look on his face like, please God, let's just get this goddamn match over with so I can go backstage and, I don't know, do whatever, play video games or whatever. It just didn't look good. 6 minutes of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon in a video package showing their training. Really? Do we need this? The only entertaining part about this spot was when the personal trainer said that he had worked with like NFL athletes preparing for the Super Bowl, and that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were going at a higher work rate, and they were exceeding the type of training that professional football players go through. I thought that was hilarious. One of the reasons being is that I know several professional football players. I went to school with a couple of professional football players, and I've seen their training regimens. Yeah, no. There is no possible way that what we saw on camera was more intense than what I've seen training camp videos and stuff like that. It's just absolutely unreal. And that made me laugh out loud, but that's just because of knowledge that maybe the average wrestling fan might not have. But yeah, that was the only entertaining part about it. Actually, too many video packages in general, again, for, week number 365 or God knows how long. Look, I get that you have a 3-hour time slot to fill. Minus your commercial breaks, you've probably got, about 2 hours and change of actual programming that you have to put together every single week. You're putting together essentially a pay-per-view per week, almost, because the pay-per-views don't have commercial breaks other than the ads for the WWE shop and the network. But what really gets to me is you have talent that you're not using, that you could feature on television, that you could build on television, that could get their push on television, so you have future stars that you are investing in. Because let's face it, the big draws right now, or the ones that are getting the major pops from the crowd, they're not getting a whole lot of push. Seth Rollins and Finn Balor are stuck in the IC title hunt. You've got Braun Strowman, who's fighting for a tag team championship for some reason. By the way, that was another match that actually looked like it was in slow motion. Both guys, Sheamus and Braun Strowman didn't look that good in that match. I mean, it was an okay match, but they were just kind of going through the motions. And that seems to be kind of a common theme as we're heading into the biggest show of the year, is people are just kind of going through the motions. This is where you want to be ramping up. This is where you want to be building things. And where SmackDown last week was building, Raw is just kind of sitting in neutral, just kind of letting the engine idle, just kind of letting things happen for some reason. It's like they don't have a plan. It's like on the Raw side, they don't know what the post-WrestleMania blueprint is. They don't know what their roadmap is coming out of WrestleMania. We know where the road to WrestleMania, everybody's worried about the road to WrestleMania. No one's worried about the road following WrestleMania, especially on Raw. And it really shows in the last couple of weeks, because you're not getting anything. Like, the next question of where do we go from here isn't being asked, and it's very obvious it's not being asked. This isn't me just saying, oh, well, I could book a show better. I probably could. I know, absolutely no modesty on my part. I probably could book a better show, because I would be thinking long term. I would be moving at the by the time we got to the Royal Rumble, I would be booking the Royal Rumble based on what I want at WrestleMania, and I would work my way backwards. I would say, okay, the week before WrestleMania, I need this. 2 weeks before WrestleMania, I need this. Then I need my Elimination Chamber. I need this, and I need that. That's how you can get some compelling booking, and that it seems to me that they've lost that. They used to do that. If you look back through their older pay-per-views, and I'm not talking like 2, 3 years ago, I'm talking like 15, 20 years ago. Even and not just because I want to reference the Attitude Era. You look through the Ruthless Aggression era, you look through the New Generation era. Even though the pay-per-views weren't great, at least you could see what they were building towards stuff. If you look back to the Classic era, the Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior era, you could see that they had their big pay-per-views and they were working their way backwards. So WrestleMania for 1993. Well, okay, so WrestleMania 1993, where do we have to be by Survivor Series 1992? Or Royal Rumble 1993, and etc., and work your way backward. That's how things were booked, and the shows were a lot better. This is going, the way things are going now, it's looking like it's going to be a lot of it's looking like it's going to be 2 episodes of Raw or 2 episodes of SmackDown kind of smashed into one into the other, and that's going to be your pay-per-view for WrestleMania. And it shouldn't feel like that. I shouldn't feel like WrestleMania is just another show. I should feel like WrestleMania is the show, the only show really that matters. And I'm not getting that vibe at all from Raw. Anyway, enough of sort of my ranting in general with the whole thing. To make a short story long, which is something that I've just done, the video packages, what you're doing with that is you're taking away TV time from matches that could be extended to make them better, to tell better stories, to set up better storylines for your pay-per-views, get better buys, more buys into your network. The other thing that it does is it doesn't allow you to introduce new stars or to set up teaser stuff like with the cruiserweights, give them more TV time, again, as a teaser to say, hey, look at what you could be watching every single week on the WWE Network. We're going to give you a match every single week, but you could get a full hour of this or a full 2 hours of this or, however long that they want to run the 205 Live program because, it's their network. They can do whatever the hell they want. Okay, anyway, next item. Somebody needs to explain to me why Nia Jax has not been built as a credible threat to the Raw Women's Championship. By this time, there should have been at least one instance where Nia Jax gets her hands on Alexa Bliss, even for a couple of moments. Even if she gets her hands on Alexa Bliss for like 1 or 2 shots before like Mickie James jumps on her and makes the save or something to that effect. There has been way too little actual interaction between Jax and Bliss for the duration of this feud. Now, granted, the feud hasn't been going on very long. In fact, the highlight packages of the feud have lasted longer than the actual feud itself, but I digress. Also, I don't think Nia Jax looked quite as strong as she should have against Mickie James. And by the way, watching that Mickie James-Nia Jax match, you know what? For a 6-time former women's champion in the WWE, as well as all the championships she's had elsewhere, Mickie James doesn't seem to be very good at calling a match. I'm going to assume that she was the one calling that match, that she was responsible for kind of calling the spots in that match. It wasn't very good. It was not a very good match. It didn't play to either of their strengths necessarily, other than the finish of catching her, catching Mickie James in midair and then turning it into that Samoan drop, which I actually really liked. I thought the ending of the match was good, but overall, Mickie James, I'm going to assume she's the one calling the match because she's the veteran in the ring. The match itself, the quality wasn't very good. I don't think it made Nia look quite as strong as it needed to. And the post-match interaction between Bliss and Nia did absolutely nothing to show that there was a major threat of a comeuppance to Alexa Bliss. I have a bad feeling that they're not going to pull the trigger and they're going to keep the title on Bliss some more for some reason. and she's going to help. You know, the title needs to change because Alexa Bliss's champion has gotten a little bit stale, and she hasn't really defended it all that much. You need to put it on a face because you're very heel heavy on Raw now. So you need to put it on a face. Nia Jax is sort of really the de facto face of the Raw Women's division for now because Asuka's going over to SmackDown. So I don't know what's going on here. This it doesn't seem to me like if this was like 2-3 weeks ago, I could see it, and then you could build Nia up as a more and more credible threat as time goes on. But you're 2 weeks. You have one more show before WrestleMania, and I'm not seeing it happening. So I don't know where they're going with this. I hope they don't screw this up because honestly, the men's division is already so screwed up that screwing up the women's division too just seems kind of criminal. Okay, speaking of criminal, let's move to the ugly. The Ronda Rousey segment. The reason why this hits the ugly and not merely just the bad is, first of all, Ronda and her gee golly shucks kind of smile that she has when she comes out and the crowd pops for her has gotten old. The next thing is who she was just put up against on Raw. Last week, Absolution in a tag team match beat Bayley and Sasha Banks. Former, and we're looking at, look at the pedigree there. Former NXT Championship, material. Former Raw Women's Champions both. I don't know if Alexa Bliss won, not Alexa Bliss, Sasha Banks won the NXT Championship. I don't have my note here, and I'm too lazy to look it up right now. So you can correct me in the comments section because there's nothing more that people enjoy than correcting factual mistakes in comments. So go for it, have at it, be my guest. But yeah, Absolution beat those two cleanly in the ring. Ronda Rousey dismantled the two of them in under 30 seconds. You see a problem there? Because I sure do. You're establishing her as a monster before she's had a chance to step in the ring for a single match. And the problem is how do you maintain this after WrestleMania? Because you're going to have to put her into the main roster and put her into the mix. Well, she's already had a dark segment with Dana Brooke. And, of course it's a dark segment. Why would you put Dana Brooke on television? And yeah, it just doesn't seem to make any sense. They were way too giving to Ronda Rousey in this segment, and I get it. They have to build her up as a badass for WrestleMania. But yeah, it just came off really bad. I didn't like it at all. And finally, on the ugly list, the last 10% of the main event. And you can count that from everything from John Cena doing the Undertaker's sit-up onward, all the way to the end, all the way to the Fade to Black. That entire last portion of the main event actually offended me as a fan. I'm not a big fan of John Cena as it is, and I'll put that in a separate video why, because there are some very good reasons to not be a John Cena fan other than the lol Cena wins memes that go around. But this just, it didn't do anything. Or what it was trying to accomplish failed on such an epic level that it just was like, okay, are they trying to make the Ultimate Deletion look good by comparison? Or is it that the writers don't know how to do a proper calling out? Actually, I think I know exactly what the problem is it's not really the writers, it's kind of John Cena not letting the writers do their jobs properly. I think John Cena is using some of his backstage clout and some of his creative control for his character to act heelish without being a heel. And it doesn't work. It's falling flat on its face. The promo afterward, it's not working. For this to work, the way that they're trying to go for. Cena needs a full-on heel turn, and they're not doing it. Cena should have started the seeds of a heel turn somewhere around the time of the Royal Rumble. Maybe just a little bit after the Royal Rumble. Definitely after Elimination Chamber, there should have been some serious rumblings. By now, he should be a full-on heel. And he's not letting it happen because of his whole I'm never going to turn heel thing. And it's screwing everything up. It is messing with all of the writing. They're trying to write around it. It's not working. And it's not working because you're not following basic pro wrestling psychology, for lack of a better term. They're trying to build it as a face versus face encounter, but it's not a face versus face encounter when you got one guy cutting heel-ish promos, but not acting like a heel, refusing to act like a heel. Or he's acting like a heel, but he's doing it in a way that's really, he does it in such a goofy way. If you want to see this done right, go back to when The Undertaker was facing CM Punk at WrestleMania. CM Punk did very much almost, pretty much identical type of stuff that John Cena is doing right now, but he did it much better, and he did it as a full-on heel, and that made it work that much better. So one, it feels very derivative of the Undertaker, CM Punk type of thing. And it's also the execution of it is so piss poor because you have Cena who seemingly is vetoing the whole I don't want to turn heel thing because he's afraid, he might lose this Fruity Pebbles endorsement, that it's just ruining everything. I would, if I was a WWE, I would just scrap this whole goddamn match. Scrap the match, forget about it, write it off, let Cena sit in the damn audience. Hey, have him intervene in the main event versus Brock Lesnar. Because, Cena has to interject himself into the main event because he's their cash cow or their golden boy, face that runs the place, whatever, doesn't matter. It's just not working. And the more that this saga goes on between John Cena calling out The Undertaker, the longer it goes on, the less I care about the match, and the more I hope it's like a 2-minute squash. Undertaker comes out, chokeslam, tombstone, match over, move on to the next segment. Anyway, that was Raw for this week. I'm sorry that it took so long to basically get through this. I've been trying to switch the format to keep it short and sweet, but there's a lot to unpack in this show. Mostly because there's a lot of stuff that's frustrating me, as you can tell, as we head into WrestleMania. So what are your views on this? Do you think that I'm on the mark? Do you think I'm way off base? Let me know in the comments. Like the video if you thought I had something good to say. Dislike and comment why if you thought that this video sucked. If there's any kind of specific topics you'd like to see me cover, put them in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.